It's no secret that competition is tight between Facebook and Google. The two internet giants are fierce rivals in many areas, including social, advertising applications, and now mobile, as all these segments intersect on mobile devices. And while both Facebook and Google appear to have a clear lead in some of these areas, a new report from Appcelerator and the International Data Corporation indicates that previous trends might be changing. And Michael King, Appcelerator's principal mobile strategist, is joining us now by way of Skype to talk about the report and its findings. Thanks for being with us today, Michael.
Hey, Abby, how you doing? Nice to see you.
Great, it's great to have you. Well, the Appcelerator IDC Q1 mobile developer report entitled "The Google-Facebook Battle Moves to Mobile While HTML5 Gains Speed" found that 39% of those developers surveyed plan to focus more on Google initiatives than Facebook's social graph this year. So how surprising is this data?
For us, it was extremely surprising. When we put together the survey, we actually thought that Facebook would just crush Google in terms of social engagement. And quite frankly, we saw Google make a tremendous showing given the fact that their social initiatives are pretty much dwarfed by Facebook in every measurable manner. So actually, we ended up doing a follow-up question to all of the developers that answered that first question, and that was, why is it that you believe Google is better positioned than Facebook in social mobile? And what they said was pretty clear, is either A, the power of the networked assets, so that would be YouTube and search and maps and Android and everything else like that, but it was also the fact that they felt Google had done a better job at engaging with them and giving them an idea of what to do with social. I mean, if you look at the backdrop, there's another question in the survey that said, do you feel as though you have all of the tools you need and an understanding of those tools to include social in your mobile initiatives? And the majority of our developers said no. And so what they did is they really appreciated the fact that Google was very prescriptive and very engaging with them on how to integrate social into their mobile applications they're building. Where Facebook, on the other hand, has more of here's a long list of things you can do with the social graph. Have at it. And so they really need to step up their engagement a little bit, I think, in order to get the developers excited about the platforms and to get the developers thinking about different ways to use social in their mobile apps.
That's very interesting. Well, while this data is good news for Google, the report also found that developers have a reduced interest in Android apps due to, quote, the continued fragmentation of the platform. So what does this mean for both Android and the iOS platform?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because what we saw is that quarter over quarter, the Android platform over the past 3 quarters has actually diminished by over 10% in terms of interest level from developers. We ask every quarter, are you very interested, somewhat interested, or not at all interested in developing for a platform? And at one point in time, Android was within 2 percentage points of iOS. iOS has remained in between 88 and 90% since the beginning of the study. So, like I say, Q2 of last year, Android smartphones were almost neck and neck, within 2 points, but they have just dropped off tremendously, and that has to do very much with the fragmentation that even with Ice Cream Sandwich, even with the developer work they've been doing, they don't seem to be able to curtail that. This is a very tough line for them to walk, right? Because if you curtail fragmentation, it's no longer an open standard. But if there's all this fragmentation, then there's no way that a developer can effectively write once and work across multiple Android devices. I think the other work that Google has to do has less to do with fragmentation of the platform and more to do with helping the developer monetize their efforts. If I write an application today for Android, then I've got to work with anywhere from 5 to 10 to maybe even 100 different app stores in order to get that application out to the widest possible audience. And that's something Google can fix, can curtail by becoming more of a centralized authority for the distribution and the discovery of those applications.
Well, before we get any further into the report, I do want to point out that the survey was actually conducted in January, but that the results were so significant that a follow-up survey was also done, right?
That's right, yeah. In fact, some of these questions, particularly the one around Google and Facebook and the one around HTML, are really what drove us to do that second follow-up survey, because quite frankly, we were kind of scratching our heads a little bit when the results came in because they were so different than what we expected.
And who was surveyed in this?
So we have 250,000 mobile developers in our network. And we send this survey out to all of them. And with the first survey, we got a response rate of a little under 10%. So 2,173 developers responded to the survey. The follow-up survey, we just sent out to those 2,100 developers. And of those, nearly 500, it was 484, excuse me, of them responded. So a pretty robust study in terms of developers. And we do boast the largest number of mobile developers in our network, and these guys, they're just great. I mean, they really are. They come to us and they give us great suggestions on how we can continue to improve our products, but also they tend to be kind of a leading indicator. So we saw last quarter's survey, we saw a tremendous amount of interest from them regarding the Kindle Fire. And as you know, you saw a massive uptick of that Kindle Fire.
That's fascinating. Well, the other big finding of the survey was the fact that HTML5 and cloud development are on the rise. So can you talk about both of these areas and what the implications are here?
Absolutely, yeah. This was another interesting one for us because we asked, as developers, do you see HTML5 playing a role in your mobile application development strategies? And it was very, very clear to us that they did. 79% of them, it's a resounding number, said that yes, HTML5 will play a role in our mobile application development strategies. But we were kind of scratching our head a little bit because, as you know, HTML5 is a pretty broad, it's a broad word, it's a broad category. So we asked actually how much code of your application will be done in HTML5 versus traditional methods. And this was the interesting part because only 6% of them said they're going to be building full web, sort of full HTML5 applications. And the other 94% were going to be some mix of hybrid and native applications. And what that tells us is that, again, backdrop of some other questions, which is how many apps will you develop this year? The majority of our developers said 5 or more. So if they're developing 5 or more applications, you may have one that's a pure native, you may have one that's a hybrid app, and you may have 3 that are web, or vice versa. But HTML5 is only one tool in the bag, or if you're a golf fan, one club in your bag to help you kind of get all the way to the PGA Tour.
Right, and in terms of cloud development?
So cloud development was another interesting one because we saw that continue to rise, their interest in it. Now, it's a bit of a mixed bag because locations and notifications tend to be the biggest services or cloud-based services that the developers are interested in integrating. But they still feel like they have a lot more work to do in terms of understanding how to utilize them. And in the 60% range of them, of the developers we talked to, said, yes, we want to do cloud services, and we think it's going to be primarily location and notifications. But we're not 100% sure how to make all that work together.
Interesting. So overall, what deductions can be made from this report in regards to the future of mobile development? I mean, are we going to see a shift toward Google Plus over Facebook?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that we can sort of deduce from this. First, that the war is not yet begun. Right, the opening salvos of the mobile social war is just, we're just beginning to hear them. And it really is about engaging developers to integrate your social aspects into their mobile applications, helping them understand how, and helping them understand that indeed mobile, at 5.5 billion devices compared to 1.2 billion devices internet connected, is a tremendously larger market. And if Facebook decides to fall asleep at the wheel here and doesn't begin to engage those developers, then absolutely Google Plus and Google Mobile Plus may become the more de facto standard. But it is all about engaging those developers.
All right. Well, do you expect Facebook or Google to react in any way to these results?
I would hope so. I mean, for both of their sakes, right? If Google's doing it the right way, then just keep doing what you're doing and keep reaching out to those developers. If Facebook is not punching at its weight, then what can it do to change that? And I think the answer is engage better education, better outreach. There's a lot of things that they can do, I think, that would really help our developers understand more about how to engage that social graph.
All right. Well, it looks to be an interesting year. Michael, thank you so much for talking with us.
Absolutely. Anytime. Looking forward to hearing from you again.
All right. Great. With this WebProNews report, I'm Abby Johnson.